Hello, everybody. It is Tuesday night. I know y'all tired of me hearing it, so saying that every week, but it is what it is. Welcome to another lovely couch conversation with the People's Pride Project. This week, as my guest, because these are all my friends. We're on the couch, we're chilling. This is what we do. It's all love.
Yeah.
I have Zulema Ramos of Abolition in Action. Now, there is a laundry list of work that is being done in the community by the person that you see sitting right here. And I am going to let them speak on their own behalf because they can give you the full scope of all of the greatness that's happening in Tampa, Florida and the surrounding areas. So go ahead.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. Um, yeah, so I always just start off with a land acknowledgement. I'm first and foremost a human in occupied Tocobaga, Taino, and Seminole territory that is, for the most part, unceded. And I'm sure there are other nations and tribes and peoples whose names I don't know, because of colonialism itself and how it records and what information in history is uplifted and what is not. Um, but the main things that I do down here in the South, just holding it down as a disabled grower. I'm an Afro-Panamanian. I wasn't born here, but I grew up here, and it's my home now. As is, all of Abya Yala, this whole world. I'm a host scholar, an eco kink educator, a vegan abolitionist, and I co facilitate a reparations hub and mutual aid garden here in Tampa, Florida, so called. And we do everything from sex worker solidarity programs like a disabled sex worker support group. We do harm reduction, which is mainly code for like needle exchange and supporting surrounding folks who are doing so as well in collaboration with them. We have a free closet, a free pantry, BIPOC folks centering first and foremost queer, trans, and disabled folks always have a space here. We just require masks because we don't want to kill each other. We want to love each other here and heal. But yeah, that's about it. That's me.
He said that's about it. Like it was just, that's all.
That's me.
That's some work. There is more than enough to be proud of. And I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate that you have the heart to even reach out into these areas, into these, and I don't want to say population as if they're separate from us,
Yeah.
but you know, those that feel most vulnerable a lot,
Mm-hmm.
that are most often ignored for whatever reason. So to be able to say, no, these are who I choose to work with through the healing, through the trauma, through just
Mm-hmm.
the growth. I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you for that
Mm-hmm.
in so much. So let's kick it off with how it all got started. Like, what drew you?
Ooh. Um, what's funny is liberals will get volunteers, but they won't keep them. And I say that to give a premise to how I got into any sort of movement work. About a decade ago, I have always like volunteered with like the YMCA and like with the kids and with cleanups and getting people to vote under colonialism and thinking that that was it and that was the crux of what being a supportive person in my community should be, especially because I'm very separated from my indigeneity and our community care centered ways of being
Mhm.
from where I'm from in Gunayala in Panama, um, in so called Central America. And when I first started doing serious work, it was with Mercy for Animals, this white centered liberal plant based group that does mostly advocacy around corporate legislation and changing it for non human animals. And they were hosting like silent event um, near where I was going to school at the time at University of Tampa when I was 18, and it was within walking distance, and they said we require professional attire. And mind you, they didn't define what that was. So, by whatever colonial standards of what is or isn't professional, I got those implications and I wore wore a suit. And I'm glad I caught the drift. And it turns out it wasn't completely silent. There was one cis white woman speaker who got to speak to the press and speak to the public, but everybody else needed to just be silent and stand still in front of a McDonald's. And though I will say I appreciate they weren't attacking the workers, they were not calling out that McDonald's is a corporation that is illegally occupying stolen land. If people really want to care about law and order, honor the treaties that existed before colonial law did. They were not calling for the rights of the human workers, who, if we're really going to say we're out here for all animals, like humans are animals too,
Mhm.
we are creatures of many on this planet. And especially when there are certain groups of us that are depersonified, that are not seen as whole persons, as whole humans. We cannot talk about veganism, which they were claiming to talk about, which has existed before colonialism,
Mhm.
which is an actual social justice stance against harm and oppression and murder for all beings, versus being plant based, where you like eat plants, which is cool and that's helpful in a lot of ways. But that's not actually attacking the basis of all of our oppression, which is colonialism and capitalism. And I was a history and philosophy major. The second semester I started college. When I first started, I was a marketing major. And then I realized really, really, really fast that that was not where I belonged now. And I learned in both my history courses where they taught about intersectional history of Black women and birth givers and non men, about real abolitionists who, a lot of whom, they don't want to talk about the history of veganism and intersectionality within Black communities because they don't want to talk about how animal agriculture is such a big part of colonialism, especially we're talking about in Africa and in the global South. We
Right.
cannot talk about eating cows without burning down the rainforest in Brazil. We cannot have these conversations separately. And so definitely as I learn more and more about what real work, what real community work looks like, I started to reach out to organizations that were around in Tampa. Like I found Dream Defenders and Sex Worker Solidarity Network and Tampa Food Not Bomb. And though a lot of the groups, even in more radical spaces and more intersectional spaces, still have a lot of growing to do, still have a lot of harm to heal, um, it definitely was what just got me moving forward deeper into my community and supporting other, especially Black trans disabled folks and Indigenous Two Spirit folks that are dealing with all of the different intersections that come with living under this occupation. And I just kind of was all extra from there because, of course, I was angry. I finding out the truth about what is purposely hidden from Black people, especially about our culture, our history, about our ability to thrive before.
Cheese and crackers. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're totally good. But yeah, that's how I stayed in the work. But I got into it sadly in a very liberal context, but I found my way.
Mhm.
How about you?
How did I get started? Um, like we were talking about earlier, this project is like a culmination of what I've already been doing. So I've
Mhm.
already been this amorphous, you know, thing kind of bopping around, bringing people and things together. And so it was always the joke that amongst my friends that if the zombies came or some massive disaster, if we can get to Sheena's house,
Yeah.
we'll be safe
Yes.
because Sheena's got the skills, Sheena has the stuff, Sheena has all of the random weird knowledge to
Mhm.
make sure we're good. And I'm like, well, how come nobody else knows to have any of this random weird knowledge? So,
Mhm.
right? It was like second nature to me. So, where has the disconnect come? I mean, fortunately, growing up within the family structure that I did, having these sorts of hands-on skills and like my dad was raised on a farm,
Mhm.
and so things like those sorts of day-to-day tasks
Mhm.
were normal to us. Knowing how to do things with our hands, knowing how this is easy, this is what we do.
Mhm.
Like, as an adult, he was a carpenter. So in our house, when dad would go on side jobs, me, my mom, my brother, we'd all go. Like, we started holding the trash bags for the garbage. Then we
Mhm.
started learning to spackle. Like, I'm in elementary school. So all of these sorts of things were really normal. So while finding out that, okay, this, I lived some anomaly of life that other people around me apparently didn't live, it was
Yeah.
like, okay, so how do I teach other people or help other people remember the skills that they have
Mhm.
that, keep us from being dependent on outside resources? It's like, y'all got this. We've got this. So why are we spazzing? You
Yeah.
know?
We've been
So,
trained to forget.
yes.
We've been purposefully separated
Mhm.
from our ability to hold each other and to keep each other safe on purpose.
Mhm. Oh, it's definitely been a part of a larger scheme. That's it's the plan.
Mhm. That's
So,
beautiful to hear though that you, like, didn't live that experience and you actually got to live in ways that I feel like most Black people these days no longer, like, are connected to, that are really important in our history.
mhm.
Yeah.
One of the things that we talk about, or I talk about a lot in the project, is food and growing food. And I see
Mhm.
this big movement of back to an agro farming sort of hybrid. Like, we may not all be doing these massive farms or have access to the land like we used to,
Mhm.
but there's an internal calling that's happening where we
Mhm.
feel this need to return and provide for ourselves and provide for our communities.
Mhm.
So I think, as a place to start, and without trying to assume, I feel like your reparations garden is a similar. First of
Yeah.
all, I love that it's a reparations garden. We're going to talk about how that works, because when I
Yeah.
was reading that, I was like, yo, that's kind of dope.
Yeah.
Before I even go any further, go ahead and break that down real quick, because
Yeah. So, especially as a Pan Africanist and as someone who is disabled and thinks a lot about accessibility, right? So, a lot of the times when people talk about reparations, they only talk about financial reparations, which are really important. And we also incorporate here. Um, we definitely, for white folks that have the funds, like if you want to come to the space, they need to be redistributed. But especially for like poor white folks that are like, well, how do I give reparations? It's like, well, there's labor that you can do if you're physically able, on site. If you're not on site, there's other labor that you can do, like research labor. Like when I grow different plants, like right now we're growing pineapple, papaya, chaya, katuk, Everglade tomatoes, beefsteak tomatoes, carrots, Malabar spinach, like habanero peppers. We're growing as much as we can grow, as fast as we can grow it, so we
right.
can feed ourselves and everybody else. Um, but helping to do those things, right? The inside of the hub and the back that has the free closet and the free pantry, that needs to be cleaned. Dishes need to be done. Food needs to be cooked for the community because we have a lot of events here. We have a lot of activists that come and stay here. We have a lot of BIPOC folks who just utilize this space. And when they come here, I want them to get everything possible that they're not getting when they go to like these liberal nonprofit spaces
Mm-hmm.
that are charity based that want to make themselves feel better versus
Mm-hmm.
actually changing the material conditions of Black people. So this space is explicitly for Black and Indigenous folks first, but all people of color to rest, to get care, to get love, to get fed. There's no requirements other than you just wear a mask. No requirements other than just cover your beautiful Black face so that we don't kill our kin. Because I love all my community. And I make sure that there is from everything from if somebody just wants to lay in the garden and just
Mm-hmm.
hear the birds and just be able to be a Black person that's in space where they're not harassed just for resting, which was, mind you, from chattel slavery to prison slavery, is
Yep.
the number one thing that Black people get physically and socially punished for. It's
Mm-hmm.
resting in public space. That's why I shout out to the NAP ministry, the
Yes.
work that they are doing. Incredible, incredible. I want to host that here by the summer. That takes a lot to be able to do that safely, especially in the South, Lord. I was reading about how they had like some of their events, like white people came and like physically touched on everything and like got in the space on purpose because they didn't, expect people to be that extra over Black people just trying to rest. Like,
I mean, I love the idea of us recognizing the need to hold space and the need to rest, or even just the act of holding space in a way, because we're known for being the hustlers, the grinders, the guy to go to because it is that sort of, we're not allowed to sit still.
nope.
If we're sitting still, we're not exercising our full potential. If we're sitting still,
Mm-hmm.
then isn't there something else you could be doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yet, you know, there are other cultures who are praised for the fact that they can lay around under a fucking palm tree and
Mm-hmm.
do nothing all day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the importance of having spaces where we can just rest,
Mm-hmm.
especially as an act of revolution,
Explicit.
as an act of defiance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, listen, plantation's over, boo boo. Like, if I want to sit my ass down, I'm gonna sit down. So that is
Mm-hmm.
so necessary, and we fight that with ourselves a lot still, because
Every day.
even
Every day.
oh, we fight it as individuals. It's like, I
Mm-hmm.
should be doing more. I should be, but it's this. We have branded ourselves as the hustle culture spokespeople.
I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm gonna lay down. I'm gonna lay down.
Right?
Especially when explicitly, if we're talking about just this part of Abya Yala, so-called America, right? 'Cause I
Mhm.
feel like there's a lot of the U.S. centered fact recording. Just
Mhm.
based on race alone, white people have the most leisure time, the most rest, and the most vacation and everything. Like they are the most likely, especially if they were in the upper echelons of whiteness, cisgendered, heterosexual, able bodied white men with a certain
Mhm.
height and look and body type and education, they are the most likely to be supported and not even supported consensually by their community, but be supported by the life they're allowed to live because of the exploitation that is required for it to be that way, not because of their
Mhm.
own labor, not because of their own grind, versus Black people and all people of color who are constantly told if we are not performing, even whether that be directly or indirectly, being told that if we are not performing like 10 to a million times better than the nearest white person, then we are somehow at fault. When we have not been given the same resources, when we have explicitly been hindered from having the same access to healthcare, education, transportation, community, family,
Mhm.
mental health. Like, it's just, that's the number one thing this space is for, is for BIPOC people to do whatever the hell they want. It's for BIPOC people to be free. Just be free and be
Absolutely.
supported. But especially when it comes to like the events we host, like on Thursday, it'll be in person, mask required, and social distancing. We'll be having tea and having Black woman led yoga with Keisha McAllister from Trust and Intuition. And it's like pay as you can. And for any BIPOC folks who can't, just come on and just, come get what you need. But white folks, there's always a requirement because, and specifically, not because I hate white people, like I'm sure a lot of people on the internet are going to claim, but because there comes a very specific, intrusive, and dangerous cost to be around white folks because of the institutional privileges they are allotted, because of the institutional interpersonal protection they are given that I am not, and because of the ways I am seen as a threat to them simply by being in their presence. And so if they're going to come in this space around other Black and Indigenous and people of color, especially queer and trans folks, especially previously incarcerated folks, as stolen people on stolen land, we shouldn't have to watch ourselves in a space that's supposed to be for our healing. So white folks are allowed in specific capacities at specific times with specific requirements, because for once we should have the conditions for us to be well, even if it's just for a day.
Absolutely. And it's the entitlement that creates this idea that it's an either or. Like, if you're comfortable, then I have to make your comfort makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I have to act on that. Why can't we be comfortable and y'all be comfortable? And when it's cool, we meet in the middle. Like,
Yeah.
it's not a one or the other. So I definitely understand the aspect of why it's like, no. This space is sacred in a variety of ways. And if you choose to enter this space, it comes with parameters and limitations, just like it's no different than you got to wear church clothes to go to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like, it's just that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Come correct or don't come at all.
Especially because where do we have to go? Like, I think that is something that's so important about, like, people. I feel like a lot of people want to talk about, folks that join cults, for instance, right? And it's like, well, where else did you have for them to go? Like, why are you talking about where someone went when you didn't provide anywhere else for them to go?
That's true.
And I know, like, for instance, with Black trans folks, like, there's a reason we don't live past 35 if we make it there most of the time. Because where do we have where we're not called outside of our identity? Where do we have where our existence isn't consistently questioned? Like, as someone like myself who has a lot of cis passing privilege, it's even worse for a lot of my trans folks in my community who do not have that privilege, who have more proximity to Blackness, who have more proximity to indigeneity, on top of who are treated based on their margins in certain ways. And then you add being trans, and between the laws, the interpersonal treatment, it's just like, why do I have to be a professor on my identity every time I go to see my mom?
That is why I host these conversations, because these spaces of I'm existing in the fullness of who I am, and that's all that matters. Like, I don't have to perform, I don't have to any of that. It doesn't matter. Let me exist in who I am. So, yes, just like all of the agreement. Yes.
All of that. And we do like non-institutional stuff too. Like, we do a lot of fighting the system and we do a lot of healing in ways that people might recognize. But we also, in decolonizing and indigenizing the space, which is will be a lifelong process for me. And if
Mhm.
anyone ever has suggestions as a person of color, I'm always open because I want to learn and grow just as much as I, hope that the people that learn after me want to. It's a constant process and it's collective. So I never say this as in like I know all the things. It's just I do this in a specific way because of
Mhm.
the experiences I have, because of the knowledge that has been shared with me, and because of the culture I am trying to reclaim. And we do things like sacred fires where we have
Mhm.
periods that are just for indigenous folks, where we just honor our ancestors and we just mourn together sometimes is what the space looks like here. Sometimes we have queer costumed media shares where it's a queer only space where we come together and it centers people of color as well, because you can't talk about the history of queerness without the fact that the original queers, the original ethically non-monogamous people, the original two-spirit and trans people.
Uh-oh. I don't know why this keeps cutting out when it's getting good. Uh, right? We've said too much. Listen, we have not touched the iceberg yet. So I'm going to bring Zulema back in a moment. Let me just see if it has unfrozen. But when folks is on fire, folks is on fire. So there is a reason that these things seem to keep happening. But when you speak truth to power, sometimes things try to break it down and cut it out. Come on now. So while we wait for Zulema to come back to us, the necessity for spaces of healing and rest that are non obtrusive or not allowing outside influences to impede upon are completely and totally necessary. And it doesn't come from a negative space, it comes from a space of clearing the burdens. Like there's so much that is carried on a regular basis for people of the global majority that these spaces of safety are absolutely necessary. Trying to get them back. Man, oh man. So we're just going to pause for a second in the midst and handle this little technical difficulty. So I'll be right back. I'm back. And I'm still working on it. So, I don't want to have to close this out because I feel like this conversation is important. Like, it is truly, truly necessary. And if y'all are willing to wait it out with me, we can keep the party going. So, let us cross our fingers and give a collective hope that the interwebs will stop hindering the conversation that we are having in this moment. I appreciate that. Thank you. But in the meantime, in between time, if you want to uh, follow Zulema on, I like to use the word interwebs just because I'm strange like that. But if you want to follow their work and, donate or get involved, they can be found at Abolition in Action on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. These connections for proactive community care services and just a proactive community care mindset are indispensable. Like, we can't say what we want for ourselves and how we want to improve these conditions um, that we've historically been living in without actually be willing to do the work. We can't keep relying on others to step up and bear the brunt of whatever it costs. Because we know that everything comes with a cost. Everything comes with a price, whether it's our labor, whether it's our convenience, whatever the cost may be. We cannot create the effective change that we're looking to, or we're even at this point, we're demanding if we're not willing to do the work. So, organizations like Abolition in Action, organizations like the People's Pride Project, or organizations like the NAP Ministry, there's so many of us that are out here trying to help build, trying to help reconnect, trying to help collectively remember, because none of this is new. None of what we're trying to do is new. This is what we come from. This is who we are as a people. This is who we are in our soul memory. You know, community care is self care. Community care is how we thrive and how we move forward because of things like capitalism and intentional sowing of mistrust, distrust, distraction. We've been taught, specifically us, specifically brown folks, you know, black, brown, indigenous, we've been taught to separate and try to this hyper independence under the guise of this is how you make. Listen, nobody nobody that has made it work has done it by themselves. And if you believe that lie, I got some other shit I could sell you. It's not even factual. It does not happen. So the fact that we're beginning to remember, and it's for me, it's always remember. It's not learn. It's not recognize. We're remembering. This is in our code. This is in our DNA. This is in the melanin in our skin. We're collectively remembering what it takes to succeed and provide and do more than just exist, do more than just struggle, do more than just carry the load for everyone else. That's not what we're here for. We have a mission unto ourselves, we have a purpose unto ourselves. And those are the things that now need to resurface. So I am still trying to get Zulema back on the line. This is not a late night chat out. No, I just gave my age. This is not on the line. But my heart and my solidarity goes out to each and every person, whether you're an organization or not, whether you're a solo person that, boots on the ground, like I just want to do something. I appreciate you. I see you. I stand beside you in the work that needs to be done. And the work comes in many forms. Sometimes being adamant about rest is the work. Being adamant about I will not allow myself to be used as simply a commodity is doing the work. Reaching out, bridging the gaps, facilitating these conversations, interacting with each other. This is how we get it done. Not just I got rich by myself, so fuck the rest of y'all. It's cute for a moment. Is it going to move the needle? No. How do you feed into your community? How do you take what you do and use it for the greater good? Yes, we're all here individually. We're all here, you know, living our own journey, but that journey is interconnected. Even when they were talking about humans or animals, we are. We're just animals that think we know better than everybody else. Realistically, we know that we know nothing. Absolutely. We're not doing this trickle down liberation bullshit. And I'm going to call bullshit on it because this hurry up and wait, this, wait to, no, no. Work is the word. Work is what's being used to describe what is necessary. But it really comes down to how are you living in your heart space and how are you showing that to those outside of yourself? How are you showing that to yourself? But this is just me having a a conversation. Well, let me try this again. Okay. Still trying. Okay, hold on. We're making progress. This never happens like this. So I apologize for the shenanigans and the technical difficulties, but we're getting it together. Here we go. Here we go. Come on. I appreciate your patience through this whole fiasco. For those that are still here, um, waiting for things to get back up and running. Jeez, can you hear me? Okay. All right. So we might have to take a step back. Thank you guys for waiting while we try to figure this out. Um, I'm going to end this broadcast just for a moment and we're going to restart and see if that helps. So don't, well, actually, I don't even know if you guys will be able to watch the next one if I do it that way. I will figure this out. Mm, 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 mm. Come on. I'm about to turn into a variety show over here trying to make sure this gets taken care of. I'm not a fan of downtime. I'm going to be real honest. But I guess that goes in line with the conversation we were having about resting, right? Hey, see?
Okay.
There- What?
We did it, y'all.
We did it.
Okay.
Oh my God. Okay. See, see, see. I can start quoting my mama real quick. That's what happens when the devil. Okay, mom.
Listen, ancestors brought us back. The internet can't stop us.
Can't stop, won't stop. Diddy. No.
Hey. Listen. Ooh, Danny, yes, we sustained through white urgency. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Patience. That white urgency, always expecting so much. Appreciate you out here, Danny Devil, and everybody
You know
watching.
what?
You're beautiful.
Absolutely. And for those that stuck around through the technical difficulties, it is much, much appreciated. But you know what? That is true. It was like, oh, y'all talking about rest? Y'all talking about chilling out? Let's see how it happens when we put you to the test. And we're like, oh my God, this is horrible.
I was like, deep breath, it will happen or it will not. That is
right. I went into a whole diatribe on my own, like, well, actually.
That's perfect. I poured me some tea.
Hey.
Well.
Absolutely. I'm not even. This is what we do here on Couch Conversations. We make the best of whatever comes because we're keeping. This is real life. This is real life. You know, and it's cool. It's like things. This has been so much of a lesson in and of itself about the things that can happen and will happen through the course of just doing and being. So, I mean, it is what it is. We learn, we go through.
Yup. Perfect. And we made it. We made
Absolutely. It. And we're back. Right? And scene.
Yeah.
But okay. Let's jump in on the use of the word abolish or abolition. Because I mean, that's your brand, for lack of a better term, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when most people think about abolishing or abolition, it's like, oh, slavery was abolished, but it's like, okay, bro, it's so it's so much deeper than that.
Existential eye roll. That's
right. Like, do you see my granny back here? Like, are you serious? But
everybody in the cage right now under the 13th Amendment, prison slavery, just snaps their neck real quick. Like,
right. Can we talk about it though?
Also, literally, if we're really gonna talk about some of the ways it is and isn't chattel slavery, like one of the ways is that it's in some instances for some people was easier to escape / less walls / less surveillance in specific ways than we have now. One of the biggest tools against chattel slavery that I feel that abolitionists had, from everything I've heard from my elders and watched and seen and witnessed, secondhand, is that they had abilities to communicate with each other from plantation to plantation, often in ways that we do not have with prison slavery. They were more able to be seen directly by the public in ways that a lot of, especially the Southern chattel slavery, like the Northern chattel slavery, was a little bit more hush hush. Like, we're not going to openly beat you as much, more like we're just going to starve you and everyone's going to see how much you're starving, but we're never directly saying we're starving you, and we're all going to pretend like these 13-year-old Black twins aren't falling over skeletons. Like, we're all just going to pretend that's fine. In the North, in the posh North. And, I think one of the biggest things about prison slavery that the system has learned is that they've learned how to victim blame in ways that are easier to hide behind because of how much they keep people that are in cages now away from the rest of us.
Can we look at it as though prison slavery is chattel slavery 2.0 in the fact that, oh, we fixed our mistakes?
Yep, literally, they learned stuff from the first time.
Right. It's like, not this time. And it's just like, let's rewrite it so that all of what fell through the first time,
Yep.
we'll make sure it doesn't happen again.
Make sure you actually control the narrative. Make sure you hyper surveil anyone that is a potential prison slave. Also, expand the scope beyond race. Because now prison slavery is to the point where colonizers, rich colonizers, will trade some of their own. Because a lot of poor white people, they get treated different and they still have privileges within that system. But they are swept up in ways that they were not last time around.
Right.
They learn to make it not look like it's about race. They learn to make it not look like it's about colonialism. That was smart. I'll give you that one.
Somebody did some studying. But I mean, so much of this, all of these different layers of things that are all wound together, they really follow the same format. It's like create an other.
Yep.
Make everyone think that the other is the boogeyman.
Yep.
Distract from who's really playing the puppet strings. And pit everybody against each other. And that's how you win the game.
Correct.
So.
Correct.
There's nothing new to this.
No.
Go ahead.
And what's interesting is if the system supposedly deterred criminalized behavior, and I say that specifically, criminalized behavior, because if someone doesn't have to take what they need to survive, what is their birthright, food, housing, the ability to subsist, the ability to feed their kids, the ability to care for themselves and their families and their communities, what is everyone's birthright as a human being, if humans did not have to take what is their right, if it was instead not withheld, because we live in false scarcity. Like in the United States, they throw away and lock up in trash cans 30 to 40% of the food. And then Publix does that nonsense. Sprouts does that nonsense. And then they hashtag give to houseless/needy people once a year during a colonial holiday. And we all wipe away how all year they keep hungry and houseless people from getting what they need to live, from what is our right, which is food. For one. To the point where they're even pouring bleach. Now, they're just not just locking up the trash cans, but they're pouring bleach in them. A lot of these corporations are poisoning people rather than let the desperate people who are going in trash cans have food you threw in the trash can. But then you would have to acknowledge that you only threw away that food in the trash can so that you could keep the supply and demand at the same rate, even though the population has less and less of an ability to purchase food. So your stats come back right. And so you can continue to justify charging people as a colonial entity on stolen land for what is people's right, food, and then lock up the knowledge in higher academia in databases about how to grow it themselves, about how our history of growing it ourselves, about our history of growing it ourselves, of foraging. All the anti-foraging laws came about right at the end of slavery for a reason.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't get on the plantation, what could we do? Actually be free.
And the fact that all of this information, while it's been taken from the source, it gets whitewashed and repackaged. So no, these aren't indigenous farming skill sets. These aren't traditional ways of, this is a new technology that we just found out yesterday. And it's like, seriously? So much of our labor and our contributions are, what is the word that I'm looking for? Not just commodified, but converted into a false narrative in order to keep the machine going.
Yeah, it's colonized, it's commercialized, it's distorted
Mhm.
It's not, the sad part is they don't even just replicate it. If they at least, as colonial entities, for instance, like Sodexo, like Monsanto, like these big corporations who have now legal patents on seeds,
Right.
on relatives, on ancestors, on history that was there before them, so that they can go and burn down Black people's farms, even though we are the original farmers, we are the original growers, we are the original agriculturalists. And then they do it in a way that destroys the land,
Mhm.
destroys the land. And it's like you would think that they would want to preserve the land even just enough to take from it later, but not even that. And yes, Danny, correct. All of your comments, correct.
Mhm.
Food sovereignty, seed sovereignty. Yes, yes, all of that. Someone's listening out here. Someone's listening.
Take credit.
Again. Affirmations, community affirmations, y'all, not just
Right.
conversations, community affirmations. Because the institutional gaslighting, the institutional propaganda,
That's a whole topic by itself.
it's violent. It's violent. And so when I say abolition, people go, ooh, ooh.
Mhm.
And it's just like, instead of being afraid to abolish a system that devastates, that separates families, that kills kids, what did this system do in the most severe crisis of our lifetime, in this pandemic? On top of the crisis that is colonialism and capitalism, let now 1 in 500 kids in the US, and that's just the documented kids. That's just the ones that the states cares about enough to get labor from later as adults. 1 in 500 kids in the US does not have any parents now. And the foster care system doesn't have any more social workers, more like family separators, but we'll kindly use that name temporarily. Some that are actual social workers that actually care about kids outside of the majority that are just family separators. There aren't enough of them because what? Education's so expensive. And what do
Right.
you need to successfully get through education? Housing, transportation, food, which are all more expensive than they've ever been in our lifetime. Healthcare during a global crisis, a global health crisis. And it's like, we want to abolish what's killing us. That doesn't mean I feel like people forget, when you abolish something, that means innately you're going to build something new, because
Right.
the old thing is gone and there is room. There's room to breathe. Like, what have Black people been crying out for, been asking since time immemorial, since this system started to overtake us, even in its proto stages? To breathe. We can't breathe with a institutional foot on our neck that dictates the ways that we love, the ways that we get care, give care,
Mhm.
view ourselves, view others, the way we access everything, the way we access food, the way we access family, the way we access knowledge. And it's like, because of all of that, people get scared at the word, but abolish, all that means is I'm going to replace what is harming us, what is killing us, what has been shown to not work,
Right.
with things that do work. Because when Chicago, quote unquote, inner city schools, when they put more police in them, all that meant is more Black and brown and indigenous kids went into cages. When they put meditation in some of those schools, you actually saw the kids be able to learn, be able to focus, be able to be supported in the way that they found the information that they were being given valuable. Even if under the colonial residential school system, I would argue it is not.
Yeah.
So it's like, people get scared because they just don't know. But instead of just getting scared at a buzzword that has been shown in a specific light on purpose, maybe just
Yeah.
listen and ask questions. Start off with that.
The the programming of how we receive information, the types of language that we use, the words that we use, words that we immediately cringe and shrink back from. These are all things that are intentional.
Mm-hmm.
All of the dog whistling, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I feel like, how do we not just talk about it, but how do we move toward recognizing in the midst of all that's being done? And when I say what's being done, you're looking at the way social media is being used. You're looking at the way that it's pushing shorter and shorter video times to keep people's attention span shorter. You're
Mm-hmm.
looking at the way news is being disseminated. Like, it's an intentional movement
Mm-hmm.
to maintain the control. How do we take the steps to not just be aware of the language, not just call attention to the language,
Mm-hmm.
but be able to rethink or decode and decipher the language? Because we end up using weaponizing it against ourselves.
Yep.
So how do we begin to not just unlearn, but really rewrite that aspect of it?
I mean, I say this in the context that do what you are able to do. I never say anything without offering support and resources as well. So if anyone here wants to follow up on the things that I'm recommending, please do, because I would love to talk and share more resources on how all the things I'm about to say can become more accessible. But one of the big things is, for instance, just because you're not doing abolition in the way that Harriet Tubman was doing it, just because you're not doing abolition in the way that Mariame Kaba is doing it, just because you're not doing it in the way that Dr. Angela Davis is doing it, doesn't mean that we can't do what we can. That doesn't mean you can't write to incarcerated folks. That doesn't mean you can't call if you want to actually make a call that really matters and participate in the system, which is harm reduction sometimes, and I do sometimes, call your district attorney, who is the one person who has the ability to drop charges on anybody in their district. Call the state attorney, email the state attorney who has the same power. Like, if we're gonna do certain things within the system, then do them in an abolitionist way, right? And the whole point of abolition is first and foremost to abolish, like, it's focused and centered on abolishing prison slavery. That's the context that we're usually talking about it. And in those ways, you can, you know, bring light to cases where people who have been left and ignored and aren't supported by major organizations like the ACLU, to your local incarcerated sex workers, to your local incarcerated Black folks who might not be part of the Tampa Black Lives Matter chapter. But it's like, we can't just do things when there's a camera, and we can't just do them in the ways that the people that are usually in the cameras say. We have
Mm.
to actually, when we look into something, actually really truly be open to it. Don't just be open to the ways you've been socialized to experience it. If it rubs you wrong, lean into that discomfort. Ask more questions, whether that means asking Google more questions, asking your elders, asking your community members. Like, not just looking at higher academia as a source of information about a subject. Hello, Danny. Abolish institutional education, decenter the teacher, indigenize education, youth liberation, hack the system, center lived experience of the most marginalized. Exactly. It's like, if you're able to hold a free school session about guerrilla gardening, that's abolition. If you are able to send a text that is right on the cusp of what is allowed in cages to someone that might help them have tools to organize as an incarcerated worker, because incarcerated people in cages, it's called prison slavery because
Mhm.
they're being put to work. In the California fires, they're the ones being thrown out there, and without their consent. And if with partial consent, it's definitely completely coerced by the situation, by the conditions they're in. and by their want to be out of a cage, which is not really consent. There's so many different things. Like go into the quote unquote communities where they say they're high crime. Just go talk to people. Just go shoot the shit. Just go listen to lived experience instead of propaganda for a day. Like that is centering abolition and centering us existing outside of this system and actually talking to each other and actually
Mhm.
figuring out what works for our communities and not just what the state decides. That's like really the crux of it. And you can think about it, whether that be in whatever field you're in. If that be public
Mhm.
health, maybe listen to Black people instead of just listening to what statistics or charts say about about how we're drug seeking or how we're more likely to do this or that. Maybe actually listen to our pain when we're in pain.
Yeah.
Maybe Black birth givers should actually be given a chance when they walk in healthy to a hospital to actually walk out of it alive. Maybe if somebody actually listened, if a healthcare worker that could have intervened. That's centering abolition and indigenizing a colonial medical space, right? We might not be able to decolonize everything, but we can at least just disrupt, right? Like take what
Right.
we know before this started and incorporate that. Just, just it will save lives. Literally, it will save lives.
I think part of the hindrance that we put on ourselves is either one, we think it's not our business, or two, we think it has to be some macro level revolution that we have to lead single handedly. And it's
Hmm.
like, no, everything that we can do, even on the most minute level, can be a help.
Yeah,
It not even can be, it is a help
yeah,
because you don't know how that one trickle begins the next step. Something that I could say in passing conversation to someone I've never met before could be the spark that gets them to do and
yeah.
it keeps, that's how the ball gets rolling. So we really, I think one of the things that we have to do is recognize you're never too small. You're never, I like to tell people, start where you are, you know, start in your home. Start with
Hmm.
what you can do that's minimal or it can seem minute and even asinine to you, like, yo, this doesn't matter. Nothing that I'm doing it matters. It matters. Even if we talk about food and food sovereignty, you may not get to go out and buy land and grow a farm. That's cool.
Yeah.
You could start a little basil plant in your kitchen window. Like, it sounds stupid, but that is a start. That's one less thing that you have to purchase. That's knowledge that you're creating that you can then share with someone else who might have the resources to be like, you know what? I don't have a farm, but I have a backyard.
Yeah.
Let's augment what's being done. So even the littlest thing can
Hmm.
be a catalyst for the next.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of times we forget that.
Absolutely. My apologies for interrupting.
No, it's
Um,
okay.
Danny Devil, I just want to shout out what they said too. They said, yes, Z, restore the harm
Mhm.
from intergenerational colonial trauma. Actually listening to our kids, right? Like I communally raise kids. I definitely have no kids that have come out of my body, nor do I plan to. But actually listening to children, not taking the colonial ideas about who or who isn't a full person and who is not worthy of being listened to. When a kid says, I don't want a hug, I don't want to be touched, that doesn't mean you teach them it's okay for adults to violate their consent by doing it anyway. When a kid tells you, hey, like, sometimes when adults are like, why did you do something?
Mhm.
Ask a 3-year old, why did you do something? Why did you throw the drink on the floor? And the kid's like, I don't know. And I feel like so many people get so mad at that. And it's just like, be okay with people not knowing things. Be okay with teaching them that, hey, we don't want to waste that juice in that cup because there were a bunch of take it as a teaching moment, because there
Right.
are farm workers who worked really hard to grow those fruits to make that juice. There are a bunch of glass workers who worked really hard to make that glass get to you. A bunch of truck drivers who drove long distances to get it to the store. A bunch of store, you know what I mean? Like, you can take something little, and instead of like getting mad at a kid, take it as a time to teach them about things that a lot of us don't know till we're older. Where the hell things even come from,
Right. We're extremely removed.
you know? Like, listen to your kids. You may not be able to go out to a protest in a pandemic because you got little ones who can't get vaxxed, but listen to your kids. Hold space for your kids. Leave
Hmm.
them room to move around, to grow, to yell. There's going to be a time where we're not allowed to do that, where that's not socially acceptable, where especially as Black adults, because I feel like 14, but quote unquote adults,
Right.
you know, like, I can't go do things in the streets that a little Black 3-year-old can do, and even then it's up in the air whether or not they can. But in a in a better world where, where a 3-year-old of color can just go and scream and laugh and throw rocks and be wild, where are they going to get space to do that? Not school, not the job that they're going to have once they're old enough to, not most spaces. So shouldn't home be the place where we break the norms of chattel slavery, of over policing our kids before the state does in trying to protect them? Like, I understand the why. I truly do.
Hmm.
But like, if we're going to get free, it's going to take little stuff like that. It really is. You know?
It's it's so crazy how deeply ingrained so much of the aggression and the pain
Mhm.
is within our generationally, you know, where we are still doing these things and thinking we're using it as a benefit. So a lot of the time we mock, you know, even each other for not beating our children
Yep.
or for not, you know, 'cause like that's become the norm. But when we really allow ourselves our own space to be like, if it's no other question than, is that what you want somebody to do to you? And just sit with that, we can rewrite so much of our existence in just recognizing each other and our own spaces. Like
Mhm.
the People's Pride Project stands on a platform of three words, right?
Mhm.
Authenticity, autonomy, and community. That's what it's about.
Mm.
That's all this stems from. And it's like, if I'm going to be authentic and be authentic in myself and show up in exactly who, what, where, however I choose,
Yeah.
and I'm demanding that I live in my autonomy, then part of that demand requires me to accept that you too have to be able to live in your autonomy.
Mhm. Mhm.
I can't suck all the air out of the room. Like, if I want it for me, I have to, even if I choose not to give you that grace, I have to recognize
Mhm.
that is your right, like I expect it to be mine.
Yep. It's like, if Black Lives Matter, that means Black sex worker lives, Black trans lives, Black drug using lives, Black incarcerated lives, Black houseless lives, Black disabled lives, Black women's lives, Black kids' lives. Like, that actually means, I think that's something that a lot of movements have been colonized into doing.
Hmm.
You'll have like racist white gay folks, you'll have transphobic Black folks, you'll have anti-indigenous rich islanders. It's like, y'all, listen, they're already doing it to us. And I know we've been trained to step on and stab as we climb, but maybe like Black women taught us during chattel slavery. I forgot which organization, but their motto was "Lift as we climb."
Mm.
It's like if you're, if you are, just for references, like down here in Florida, if you are, or even in Georgia, because it's honestly, these borders are nonsensical. I'm always in both places, so whatever. But it's like if you're in the South, right, and you are even within people of color, like if you are a light skinned person that has a lot of money and you can't necessarily physically go to defend the last forest in Atlanta from becoming the biggest cop city in the nation. Maybe you can send supplies. Maybe you can sponsor an activist. Maybe you can help with somebody has a summer house in ATL and you can let it be used as a mutual aid space for the movement workers. It's like if we all for real, even at whatever level, actually
Mhm.
got together as people of color, like as a Pan-Africanist, like we could really actually get what we need done if all the people of color of the world, or at least the majority, or at least half, actually,
Some of us.
some of
Some
us,
of us. Some.
historically, it only takes 8% of a population in a nation to agree with a movement for that movement to have major wins. So if 8% of people of color worldwide were actually able to connect and get together in a way where we supported each other's needs and goals and liberation, like we could actually get freedom. But we have to stop being liberal. We cannot accept reforms. Like our ancestors, my ancestors, Marsha P. Johnson, did not die as a full service sex worker in the streets trying to do the same thing I'm doing, run a mutual aid hub for people of color that were often ignored, the like black houseless trans kids, the the kids that have been ignored by the system. It's like they didn't do all that for me to shake hands with a white legislator and get better food for people in cages and think that we did it. Like harm reduction is important, but we have to recognize that that's not abolishing what is killing us. Like we have 2 million people in cages and most of them look like us. Like
Mhm.
I'm not taking reforms anywhere. We need prison slavery to be over. We need people to be out of cages. We need the state to disassemble itself and redistribute the wealth it has stolen and get as close to that as we can and stay focused, y'all. We gotta stay focused, y'all. 2020 wasn't it, y'all. We gotta stay focused. It's hard. I'm not saying it's not hard. I'm not saying I'm not tired, but I'm saying we'll love each other through it. I'll love us
Absolutely.
through it. We'll love through it. I'm so desperate. Don't listen to me.
No, absolutely. Listen to all of it. Listen to all of it.
Actually, I take
All
that
of it.
personal.
You know what? We're gonna listen. We're gonna follow through.
Yeah,
We're gonna go to the website. We're
yeah,
gonna do it
yeah.
because this, yo, I know I come off real aloof and get like these conversations. They're everything that my heart needs to say, but it's like it comes out of other people's mouths.
Heard.
So I just sit back and I'm like, yes, yes. I just get to open the door and give people space to just be loud and say whatever they need to say. That's my
All
job.
out, all out now.
Hey, that's all I'm here to do. So I love when people like yourself can come on and just say it and to be like, don't listen to me. No, listen to it. Every word of it. Rewind the tape, write the shit down. Listen. This is where we start making the difference. Because for so long we've been taught not to listen, to be afraid to listen, to be afraid to gather, to be afraid to act.
Mhm,
So yes, hang on every word, commit it to memory, and then learn how you can make use of it.
mhm,
You know, bring it in, shake it up, and be like, okay, this is what I can do.
mhm.
That's how we make this move. That's how we make shit shake.
And yo,
People like you,
all
yo.
out. Like to everybody, like all queer trans people of color, if you need a space in the South, come through if you want to learn, right? Like I only learned everything I'm doing because of other folks doing it. And I'm being like, okay, I see actual material conditions being changed. What's that person doing? Okay, I see the
Mhm.
material conditions being changed. What's that person doing? And just like learning, doing this shit. So like anytime you're ready to come to the South, you got a space, fam. I want to learn from you when I come up there because I do come to Jersey. It's
Say
been
word.
I do. I sure do. I sure do.
About to make it happen.
I want to learn from you and everything y'all are doing. Cause like I know like there's stuff y'all are doing, I'm not doing. There's stuff I'm doing, y'all ain't doing. And if we just like keep sharing and instead of being like, oh, like, here's the thing. I never will fault people for not knowing. I'll fault people for not listening.
Yes.
Fault people, don't fault us. Like white people are harsh enough with us. The system is harsh enough with us. Don't fault us for not knowing. Fault us for not listening. Now, if you come and you tell me, hey, I noticed you're not being equitable in this way, and like you can do better in these specific ways, and then I'm just like, nah, like I'm good, like we're goody. Then call me out, call me all the way out on the internet, blast me out.
In front of the people.
You know, but like, at least give me the chance. You give us the chance to,
Right.
you know?
And the intellectual hoarding,
Yeah.
like I'm glad you feel that your piece of paper is more valuable than mine. However,
Yeah.
we still got to get it done.
Yeah.
So the this sharing of knowledge and intention and skills, and I say kudos to any and everybody that's doing this sharing. It's great to be highly academic and you know all of the words and have read all of the books and attended all of the conferences, but if you can't share that, then you're doing yourself and everyone around you a disservice. That's the point of this couch. I say it's somewhere between the professor and your cousin Pookie. Like you were going to make sure that it's easily understood, even if it's higher level stuff that we're gonna break it down, flip it up,
Yep.
translate it so that we can all move forward.
Yeah.
So again, very much appreciative. We have gone over our time.
Oh shoot. I just
We're making up for the blackout. That's all. It's cool. It's
sorry.
cool. And I appreciate you for sticking through the whole time, even through the technical difficulties. We are definitely going to collab on some things and
Okay.
make it happen. Like I say, for me, I set the table so everybody else can eat, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're here to do. Put the resources out there and let them take what they need. So 100% this there will be collaborations in the future.
And y'all, anybody again that's listening that sincerely is out here for us, by us, come through, where cover your beautiful face and come through, whether that be virtually too, right? Like I'm down
Mhm.
to meet with people in whatever ways accessible to them, to share and uplift in whatever ways are accessible to us, because it's going to take all of us to get us free. So just much love and blessings to everybody, and thank you for holding this space, because seriously, it's not it that's the only reason I'm like even saying all this. I usually don't even say all this. You hold space. Thank you.
Thank you. So, y'all, this has been another couch conversation with the People's Pride Project. Check out Zulema and everything that they are doing. You've seen the information. It's come across the screen about 97 times, so there are no excuses.
Correct. Come correct.
Absolutely. Listen, getting that ass if I need to. But we're going to close out tonight. Thank you again. Love y'all all, and we will catch you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.